Hello everyone, welcome back. One of the things you might be wondering if you're either looking for a property or you have a property and you're planting some gardens is how much can I grow on a certain amount of land? And you might be surprised at how much you can grow on a relatively small amount of land. So we have 0.58 acres here. So I'm going to show you our entire garden. This is a Renaissance Reflection white birch. It's one of the borer-resistant varieties in our front yard. This is an area we don't often show in our YouTube videos, but this is a beautiful birch tree. And we also have a Montmorency cherry here. I planted a couple years ago. I actually had to cut the whole center out for a black knot, but it certainly recovered this summer. It's looking beautiful. And those are some dogwood bushes there along the driveway. And as I turn this way, there is a flowering weeping cherry there. Now, one of the cool things about this as we go through, this is just a holly bush. We have some fig, which I actually pruned this back to a single leader since this particular video. It was sort of like a bush form, but it wasn't producing any fruit, and it was kind of getting messy, so I kind of just made it look like a normal tree, just one stem. And then a pomegranate tree in a pot on our front porch. But the reason I mention this is you might be surprised at how much you can grow on. We basically have a half an acre, and I think we have a good 30 fruit trees in the ground, a number of ornamental trees. You just saw the birch. We have a couple of different birch trees, some pines, all kinds of stuff that we planted. So you can do a lot on even a half an acre. And so sometimes when you're looking for places, you might think, I need a lot more acreage than you really do. And I'll tell you that this half an acre is about all that we could really keep up with in terms of time and energy to keep it maintained, weeded, etc. So that's another thing to think about, actually. This is our front garden. We have a dappled willow, we have a wigalia there, we have a 9-bark, a whole bunch of low things. You hear the cars going by in the front yard there. We have some balloon flowers, some echinacea, some white sage, some, what else is in there? We got some hens and chicks on the corner that have been there for like 6 years and really spread out nice. So beautiful kind of perennial garden. Those are all perennial, so nothing in there is annual. I really love echinacea, and so do the honeybees. But as I was saying before about the size of your property, if you have to also think how much can you really maintain and be realistic, because a lot of people think they can maintain a lot more than they really can. And I can tell you that we are people that are really into gardening. Obviously, we have a YouTube channel. We're kind of fanatical about it on some level, and it's all we can do to keep up with a half an acre. And so that's just something to think about, in terms of the time that you have, the energy that you have, and what you're willing to put into it, because it does take a lot of time and energy to keep it up and keep it looking nice. These are peonies right on about our property line there, and a quince bush, and then in the foreground there are beautiful, beautiful northern spy apple tree. And so this one last year gave us like almost 2 bushels of apples. This year it'll probably be like a bushel, little less than last year, but still beautiful apples. As I was recording this, it was July. I'm voicing it over in August. Those apples are huge now. Just a great tree. Northern Spy is a great one if you're looking for an apple for the north outside our fence. So these things are all in our front yard. This is our Japanese quince. They do produce fruit. So I don't know if I was able to catch any fruit here as I was looking around, but they do produce fruit. The fruit become very fragrant. They turn bright yellow and they get really nice color, but they are sour as sour can be. I mean, I think we ended up using you'd have to use like a pound of sugar to make them edible. I mean, technically I guess they're edible, but they're not like a European or like I guess American quince, whatever it would be. So they're mostly for looks. This is the guy who's protecting our golden russet tree. This is kind of a fun thing we got from a coworker whose family was having a garage sale, and they had one of those. I'm hoping it'll keep the squirrels out of the tree. And just some frogs hanging out here by our juniper. So this is all in our front yard, which, like I said, is not usually shown in any of our YouTube videos. We're usually inside the fence area in the backyard, but thought I would just show that as kind of a complete garden tour. So this, as you walk in, is our orchard, which is basically our entire yard, goes around. But this is the original kind of first plantings, a lot of them. This is a golden russet tree. So just in this particular section that you're looking at now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm just counting in my head, like 9 fruit trees, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So back to the point I made in the beginning, if you get dwarf varieties, if you get some things that, don't get huge, you'd be surprised how much you can grow. This is our shade garden area. There's our forbidden ramps. I say forbidden sort of like tongue-in-cheek because people get really upset for some reason when you talk about ramps online. It's kind of funny actually to me, especially in western New York where they grow acres and acres of ramps in the woods wild. But in any event, some more of our apple trees here. That's a blue perennial. Had a little bit of scab issues, so it lost a lot of leaves this year. But if you have anything like that with your trees, like scab or whatever, that's a 1-year kind of thing. As long as you spray and everything, next year the leaves will come back. And every year is like a new year for the leaves, so they start fresh. So if they're diseased 1 year, doesn't mean it always will be. You can address that, and next year the tree will be fine. This golden russet, huge tree, doing really well. Our friend the owl's up there keeping watch. Only a handful of apples because of a late freeze, though. These are some hibiscus. So hibiscus, I made a video on those. Those are perennial, and they get those huge flowers that are like the size of a dinner plate. They're really, really cool. Late summer, early fall flower. As I'm recording this, it's the 9th of August, and they're just starting to open. So they're like an August, September flower. So it's kind of cool. You get something later in the season, and they're just a neat bush in the meantime. These are banana plants. I got one of them at, I think, like Tractor Supply and one at Lowe's. One is a Cavendish banana and one is a Grand Non, which I've never heard of. I think the Grand Non was the Tractor Supply one, but they're doing really well. So we'll see if they get fruit. They should. It'd be kind of cool. This is our side garden, gets a lot of sun. These are golden raspberries. I made a lot of videos on these over the years. I've moved them all over the yard. They used to be next to the garage in the video that, if you've seen our video on golden raspberries, you probably saw that one. These are the same plants, just moved over. This is a tangerine, Satsuma mandarin, and so it's getting some good fruit on it. We got a couple fruits last year, but they were a little dry because I read that when trees are young, they'll make kind of like a dry fruit. But as they age, they'll produce better quality fruit, so I'm looking forward to that. This is my pepper garden that we built, just a big raised bed on top of like an old stone slab that used to be an entranceway to the basement. So just sort of made this into a raised bed. So this is our kind of original orchard. Some of these trees were planted the very first spring, like this one, this Kid's Orange Red. 2017 was our first spring here, and this was one of the first trees we planted. Beautiful, beautiful tree, beautiful apples. And on the subject of how much you can grow in a particular area, these trees are dwarf. Like that's a Bud 9 rootstock. The Kid's Orange Red is a Geneva 11. It's called rootstock. So they're dwarfing rootstocks, which are essentially just crabapple roots that you can graft regular apples to, and they will stay small because the root system stays small. That's the Cliff Notes version anyway. This is our multi-grafted tree. There's 30-some varieties on here now, and I'm excited because for the first time ever we got some golden russets on there, which is the actual base tree, and this is a Cox Orange Pippin apple, so that's the first time we've ever had a graft flower and fruit, so that's exciting. This is our Frost Peach. I've made a lot of videos on this. We just love this tree. I purposely don't prune it. We've been round and round with people in the comments section about that. Maybe some of them aren't visible anymore because some people were kind of nasty for some reason. It's interesting the number of nasty comments you get sometimes with gardening videos, but the reason that tree is big is it's also for privacy for our deck. So these are Colville Blanc apples. But when you're growing trees, they can serve multiple purposes. So this one here, this Colville Blanc, which is a great French pie apple, is basically only 10 feet tall, and that's as tall as I'd let it get. The peach tree, we let it get huge because it's right next to our deck. Kind of gives us a nice private little nook and makes peaches. So it's like a double bonus. This is the brown snout apple and a little seedling pawpaw that I dug up and moved this year while it was dormant into the herb garden. But, on this topic of growing things, and, sometimes things have multiple purposes. And so most of our trees are really small. Some of them are a little bit bigger, like the apple, and the peach is giant, but the peach is also providing us a lot of privacy and shade on the deck. And so it's gives us a lot of peaches most years. This year there's only a few because of the late frost. But most years it gives us hundreds of peaches and provides a lot of nice privacy up here on the deck. So let's go up on the deck and check out what's going on up here. So again, as I mentioned, we have just over half an acre, and we haven't even explored half of it yet. We're barely even into the backyard. This is our deck area. I don't think I show this too much on the YouTube videos. These are our hops. I know I've made some videos on those, sort of get a little view, but see on the right hand side there's our peach tree. That's why we let that get really big, because it really blocks out the view from down the road, and so it gives us a nice private nook to sit up here and not feel like you're on display, and so sometimes you just want to have a private place where you can kind of tuck yourself in and kind of not be seen or whatever. And so some trees can serve multiple purposes. These are our roses that are potted up, all different varieties. The one that was before, this one's called Poseidon. It's like a purple. That's not a great example because it was sort of already done. But those will flower throughout the whole year. I like to grow a lot of roses that flower throughout the whole year and smell really strong too. Because who doesn't love a rose that smells really strong? I always feel like roses that don't smell are a tease. Here's some hops. You can kind of see them growing on there. We actually just harvested these the other day. As I said, it's August 9th as I'm voicing this over, and it was, a couple days ago we harvested like a pound of hops, which we don't try to get every single hop. Here's our Calabrocha, Springville colors, purple and gold, kind of fun. But yeah, we don't try to get every hop because they're very tedious to harvest, and so we just get enough to make a couple batches of homebrew and let the rest grow. We like the plants too, so. And also they provide good privacy, as you saw up on the deck. Here's our vegetable garden, and some roses in the kind of left-hand side, and you can see in the distance there's some more fruit trees, and as we pan around, a big chestnut tree I've made videos on, and then to the right-hand side, a bunch of pawpaws and pears and peaches and apples. So there's just all kind of stuff going on. It's so cool. And again, when you think about how much you can grow, if you put a lot of things around the edge of your property, and you could put in arborvitaes, and we do have them. Here's our burning bushes. You could put them almost anything there, but like if you could do that, you could also do an apple tree row or a peach tree hedgerow or a pawpaw hedgerow, whatever it might be. And so when you start to think about plants in that way and not necessarily worried about, here's our little gnome garden bench we built, Japanese maple, and this is the gnome garden area. But when you don't really think about orchard spacing and kind of just think about making a food forest, your options kind of open up a little bit, and what you might do becomes different than what you might do if you were considering like planting a commercial orchard or something. Trees don't necessarily need 12-15 feet in between them, and they don't get that in the wild, and they grow just fine. There's a cool mushroom rock we found, so this is sort of like the mushroom gnome garden area. And so it's kind of fun when you think about when you're planning out. Now, I'll be honest, we didn't necessarily plan out our landscape. We've sort of just made this up as we went. There might be certain things that we would do differently if we started from scratch in terms of where things would go. But you kind of learn. Now, I've also dug up a lot of pretty big fruit trees and moved them around. And so there's one video I'm working on now. I dug up like a 13-foot, 12-foot pear tree this winter, and it's in the background here. I think we'll walk past it in a minute. This is our sedum gnome garden, but you can always move things around within reason. I mean, even things that you think you couldn't move, you probably can. Now, once something's been in the ground for 10, 11 years, probably not, but that pear tree was in the ground like 6 years, and I moved it, 5 years. 5 growing seasons, and I moved it, and it's doing okay, and then next year you'll never know that it was ever moved. So you can always move things. It's best not to, of course, but every gardener moves stuff all over the place all the time. Here's our gnomes just hanging out, having a couple beverages by the fire. So we like to make little themes in the gardens. This one's mostly different sedums and of course all the cool gnomes that we put out. Kind of arrange around, tell a story, that kind of thing. But it's something to think about. That's something I never really thought of at first, was having a theme for the gardens. We just sort of planted stuff. Like, oh, we like that, and we'd plant it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But as time has gone on, we've sort of kind of, I guess you could say, masked things. So, like, this one is all different sedums, but that's only been true for, like, the last year or so. And then, as you'll see in the back, we have a kind of a pine garden. We have a perennial, like, wildflower garden. So things are sort of themed and go together in a way. We just like that kind of order, but there's nothing that says you have to do that or anything. But it's something that I've really found a lot of benefit from, because similar types of things like similar conditions too. Like these sedums like kind of dryish, warm, sunny conditions, so they love this spot. Whereas some other things we tried to grow here weren't as happy. Here's what we did with our pine tree stump. There used to be a pretty good sized pine tree here that we had taken out. Here's a peach tree we just planted this year, a donut peach. This is the pear tree I moved. I cut it way back. So this thing was like 12 feet tall. That's an Anjou pear. This is our river birch. So, you don't just have to plant edible things. This is a beautiful, beautiful tree. This is heritage river birch. The bark is really pretty on this one. And even since I made this video, it's become more and more orange and brown as it matures. It's maybe been in the ground 3 years or so. We got it at a tree farm, so it was good size when we planted it, but it's doing really well. Birch like a lot of water, at least that variety does. Here's kind of the little musical gnome area. Fun thing here with this tree, this actually was part of our pine tree in the back that we had taken out as one of the trunks, and a woodpecker had carved, not carved, I guess pecked all these holes in it. So that was kind of our clue that thing needed to come down before it fell on its own. And so we had it taken down, but I saved this particular part of the trunk when we were cutting it up to make a little gnome garden home out of it, so to speak. So the woodpecker did that for us. So, when you're thinking about, in terms of, again, like how much you can grow or whatever, or like how much will fit in a particular area. I mean, this right here, I think I have, I don't even know, 12 arborvitaes right there along the fence. There's 4 pawpaws right there. I mean, so that's, if you think about it, like 16 trees essentially within that one screenshot. And now there's another one here, another one behind it. So obviously you have to keep things pruned to a degree or grow things that don't get that big. But I've lost count of how many trees we have, and we planted every single tree here except for that gigantic chestnut. Here's our pawpaws. These are Shenandoah, one of my favorites. They're a large, very mild pawpaw. Like most things, pawpaws, the different varieties taste different, just like a Granny Smith tastes different from like a Red Delicious or whatever apple. The different varieties of pawpaws are wildly different in the color that they are inside. Some are orange, some are white. Some are yellow, some are almost pink, and they have different flavor characteristics too. This is a corkscrew willow we got on clearance actually at Lowe's a few years ago. It's like $10 or $15. It's doing really well. I cut the center out to make it like ball shaped this winter, and it's done really well with that. So we go to the sort of the back corner here. That shed, it's kind of a cool story. The people who lived here before, that shed was her playhouse as a kid, and they brought it here and had it kind of like brought here when they moved here way back in like 1980 or something. So we refurbished it, and when we moved in it was in kind of rough shape, but we refurbished it, fixed it up, new floor, new windows, new roof, everything, because of the nostalgic value. It's just kind of, and it's a cool little shed too. This is the planter around the stump I made a video on. We put zinnias in there, all different kinds, the giant zinnias. This is the back corner of the property. We have some lilacs. I'm a big lilac fan, so we have a ton of lilacs around. Some cranesbill, some lamb's ear behind it. Lamb's ear is one of those things, if you want something that's pretty much guaranteed to grow, you plant lamb's ear, it's going to spread and go crazy all over the place. I mean, got to the point where we're ripping that out of certain gardens because we have so much of it, and it regenerates. These are all forsythias. We originally planted those there before we had the fence as like kind of a block for all the light that came in from the back corner. So now they just provide a lot of flowers, and they also help a little bit with that too. Some lilacs, some privets, our back gate here that goes to the neighbor's yard that we made just so that we had a way to get back and forth, hang out and stuff. There's our shed, kind of looking through the back window. Some of those arborvitaes are a little beat up. Sometimes when you plant arborvitaes, they'll start to get a little brown, but they usually grow out of it, turn green again, at least from my experience. That's what happened with these here on what we call Pine Island, this section here. So there used to be a really big pine tree here, and it was sort of like mounded up the way the roots and dirt were. So when we had it taken out, there was this big mound, and grass never really wanted to grow because the soil wasn't very deep above what was left of the roots. So we decided to plant a whole bunch of different pines and just make it a themed garden. So this is a tree I'm really excited about, this bald cypress. Bald cypress are a really, really cool tree. Now, they're native to like Florida and like southeast United States, but they'll grow here really well. Actually, there's down the road from us, there's a place that has like 3 of them that are probably 40, 45 feet tall. So they're obviously really old, but it's just such cool trees. We have just a little water garden. I think we'll probably make a little bit more water feature in the future. But that bald cypress, what's neat about those is they drop their needles every year. So they'll turn like bright orange in the fall or yellow, depending on the particular tree. And then they'll drop all their needles. And then just like a deciduous tree, they'll come out in the spring. Just such a cool tree. And the foliage is so ferny on it. This is our back perennial kind of wildflower garden. With, of course, fruit trees mixed in there. So there's some plums. There's 3 different plums, a green gage, a Jefferson plum, which is another green gage from Albany, New York area, a Santa Rosa plum, which makes some really nice plums. Then there's some different lilies. That actually smells really nice. Lilies don't usually smell much, but that peach color one has a really nice smell to it. So this is kind of looking back toward the house from the back fence. But as you can see, this is, like I said, we have a little over half an acre. Inside the fence is maybe like 0.4 acres of it. So it looks big in this shot, and it is pretty big, but I mean, it is half an acre. And so that's what I'm saying. When you're looking at, land or whatever, and you're thinking, of course, more is always better. Don't get me wrong. If I had 12 acres, I'd be happy too. But sometimes when you think about what you can actually manage, maintain, and really do something with, it's just something to think about. Like you can be totally productive and happy with a half an acre and have enormous gardens and fruit orchard like we do and have everything do really well. This is where our basswood tree was. I think it was in some other videos. We had to have it taken out. It was starting to die and get really kind of, the tops were breaking out, and that thing was probably 60 feet wide and 70 feet tall. So that big stump is there. Well, you can see the slices there against the wood pile. But in terms of what you can grow and what you might be able to do with your property, don't sell yourself short. If you have a half an acre, you can do quite a bit. Here's our Honeycrisp tree loaded with apples. Super excited about that one. Battery died, so don't usually make videos that long, but sort of looking back toward the backyard from where we just were. Again, of course these things will get bigger. So that bald cypress will get, eventually 60, 70 feet tall and 20 feet wide. They're a very pyramidal tree, though. They won't spread out much. This is just a slice of that basswood we made into a table. But, you got to keep up on stuff. Like that willow we cut the top out of. This winter, it was probably like 15 feet taller than that, but it was just a spindly top. So I sliced it out, and now it's a nice ball shape. So you got to sort of keep up on pruning things, keep things. But, you're looking at right there, there's 3 plums, a cherry, 2 pawpaws, and 3 apples. So on it was like 10 fruit trees right there, just in that little pan of the yard. But you put them around the edge, you don't even notice. You still, as I'm panning around to the yard, you see there's a lot of really big open spaces still. So if you keep your middles open and put all your trees around the edges like this, you still have a ton of grass and open space that you can enjoy and have people over, and you can sit, you can play lawn games, you can picnic, do whatever, and so it doesn't have to take your entire yard to have all that stuff. Put everything around the edges, and then you'll have the center free, and you could still grow. I mean, I'm sort of running out of things that I want to plant, which is kind of weird for me. Like, in terms of trees, I could plant more pawpaws or more apples, but I already have pretty much all that I want in terms of varieties, so that's why I have the multi-grafted ones. But as you see, as I pan around here, there's a lot of open space, so lots of open space, a lot of room to breathe, even with 30 plus fruit trees and a whole bunch of ornamentals. But this bald cypress is so cool. It's just such a cool tree. So we were walking down the street, and we saw it. We didn't know what that was. We saw a tree that was, as I said, like 40 feet tall of that. And when it get big, those kind of ferny, frondy, kind of needle, like the foliage essentially, were like a good 6 inches long, 5-6 inches, and it just looked like a fern that was a pine tree. It was so cool. So we had to look it up and figure out what it was, and that was like priority number one, to get one of those and get it in the ground this year. They say they grow fast, but a pine tree, like a couple feet a year. Now granted, 10 years, that's 20 feet, but it'll look really cool at that point. This is sort of the hallway of fruit trees, so there's a whole bunch of apples. I showed the Honeycrisp a minute ago before the battery died. We're kind of repeating a little of the tour, which is okay. This is one of our few non-heirloom trees, Honeycrisp, that's not like an unusual variety, because we just love them, and they grow so well here. And I think part of the reason they grow so well here is they're right next to a pawpaw tree. I've mentioned that before, but it's kind of interesting because they don't get anything special. I mean, I spray all the apples the same way, like 2 times a year I spray at petal drop, and then usually in July or so. And that's it. That's all the spray that any of the fruit trees get. And so those do really well. But look, they're almost touching this pawpaw tree, and I think that has something to do with it. It's not scientific or anything, but they've just never really had bugs over here in this part of the orchard. This is sunflower pawpaw, and these are so good. We love sunflower. They're called that because they're really, well, I assume because they're really yellow inside when they're ripe. As I mentioned, some pawpaws are yellow, some are white, some are like orange. This one's a really dark, rich yellow color. We planted this in the spring of 2017. It was literally, we got it from Stark Brothers. It was a tiny little, like, the size of a pencil, literally, in a 4-inch pot that came in the mail. And now it's like 12 feet tall and 12 feet wide. That's the really fun thing about, when you plant your things, plant your trees, and when you finally start to see them mature, it's just such a cool thing. Here's some lungwort. Ignore that downspout that should be connected there. This is what we call the star garden because of the 2 stars there that were on our house. We just painted them purple and gold, the colors of the town we live in. It's kind of fun, like the school. Why not? We had to paint them some color because they were all rusty, and it's kind of fun. This little garden here, we have quite a hodgepodge. We've got some citrus trees in pots that I've shown those. Those are the ones that were in the basement. Battery died again, so we'll jump there. Some rhubarb. I moved that over here. The golden raspberries were actually back here, but the rhubarb was starting to take over. Court Penju Plat is the oldest apple, or one of them anyway, in common cultivation. Goes all the way back to ancient Roman times. Such a good apple too, but just cool. It's like when you eat that, you're literally eating history. It's such a cool thing. This is the chocolate mint. It literally tastes and smells like kind of like a thin mint cookie. This is kind of a cool thing. Vandeman quince. We have a couple of fruit for the first time. I planted that tree last year, so I'm really excited to see. Supposedly that variety of quince you can eat like straight up without cooking it, like it's just about edible. Now we got it for our cider making in the future, but I'm also interested to make a video on what that actually tastes like. Here's our tarragon. I moved that over here. This is the fun experiment, the all-in-one almond. This thing is growing like a weed right now. This thing is huge. It was this tiny little bare root plant, and even since I've made this video, it's grown like another foot or two. The question is, will it live through the winter? So that's what it's supposed to. It says to zone 5, but we'll find out. Here's some limes on our one of our lime trees in the container. Of course, those in the summer in the winter they go down in the basement under the grow lights, as I made a video on those. Mint taking over everything. Here's our pilgrim cranberry. I'm making a video on those separately. They're really cool. I mean, we got a whole bunch of cranberries. I've tasted a few now that some of them have turned red since I filmed this, and they're really good. They taste like a cranberry. Hero Star apricot. This is an apricot I planted this year. I think apricots are cool trees. They just have neat foliage. Of course, delicious fruit, but Hero Star is supposed to flower late, and that's what you want around here, is a late flowering apricot so it doesn't get zapped by the frost. This is looking back toward the vegetable garden. We'll do a different tour on the vegetable garden itself because that's a whole nother video. These 3 trees were all grafts that I made. And then you can kind of see there, they were back toward the hops on the deck. Those hops are so cool. They were there when we moved in, but they were just on the very corner, and over the years we've trained them and they've grown. Hops will sort of spread just like mint underground, and then they pop up all over the place. And this little planter we made along the garage, we have some onions doing really, really well. Those are getting big. Since I made this video, they've gotten a lot bigger too, so they're almost ready to harvest. Probably like mid-August, but I just let them grow and grow until they're just not going to get any bigger, so why not? That's a great spot for them. So, yeah, you can grow a lot on a half an acre. All of this is just on a half an acre, basically. Like I said, we have 0.56, and you know, some of that's like in your front yard right by the road, so that's not being used for anything. So you can do a lot. And so when you're looking for places, looking for houses, and you're looking at, you know, the land and wondering what you can do, don't sell yourself short, because there's quite a bit that you can accomplish. This is a view underneath our peach tree. I just love this peach tree. You know, I just think back to maybe 5 years ago bringing this thing home. It was on clearance at a local orchard in the back of our Ford Escape, and now this thing is 15 feet tall, 20 feet wide, and just, it's a cool experience to sit in the shade underneath a shade or underneath a fruit tree that you planted yourself, and now you're sitting in the shade underneath it relaxing on a nice summer day. It's just the coolest thing. So I hope you enjoyed our garden tour. Thank you for watching. If you stuck with us the whole way, we appreciate it, and we hope to see you again soon.